Welcome to this session of making of mandala wall hanging. Mandala wall hanging. I have a little bit of a difficult time using the word mandala when I make this and when I speak of it and when I introduce it, because I mean that's the typical name that you see a lot when someone advertises mandala wall hangings. And that's all I've ever known them as, is mandala wall hangings. So meaning of a mandala, you typically will see this circular design. A lot of it has meaning in the Buddhist and Hinduism cultures and religions, but it's always circular. It's always symmetrical. There's always meaning to it. So the word mandala, wall hanging, Native American, kind of doesn't go together, but I mean, that's how I always knew it, as a mandala wall hanging when I thought about Native American wall hanging. So then if you look up the word Native American mandala wall hanging, you come up with a lot of different kinds of wall hangings. For instance, this is a typical mandala wall hanging that I usually see when I think mandala wall hanging, But this is typically what a lot of people see in markets, Native American markets, wall hangings. So then when you look up Native American war shield, that is more typical of the wall hangings that we are going to make today. And these are kind of like they provided spiritual protection to the warriors on horseback. They'll paint symbols on it, they will add feathers on it, or things to it to give it power, or things for protection. And these shields and symbols were always hung in a prominent place in the home. So that's kind of the history, or the meaning of it, what's all behind that. And so from here on out, I'm going to call this our Native American shield wall hanging. Okay? This frame here is a wild vine that grows up here, grows all over actually, but you can find these climbing up trees. I don't know the scientific name for the actual vine, but it's fairly thick, and it just kind of makes its way up, and lots of times will kill a tree off. This is an example of what I pulled off the tree. It's kind of hard to see. It's laying on the ground, but I'm holding it with my hand there, and it's just, skinnier and goes all the way back to the wider part where it came out of the ground. And I just took my the scissors thing that I have and cut it off. Here's another picture of a long piece that I had harvested. And before, when I did go and harvest it, I did make sure that I laid down some tobacco, and I said some prayers and thanked the Creator for providing these for us. These are the ones that I had harvested. I ended up making them smaller because they were too big for this project, but I got this many done for you, and got them wrapped up and ready to go. So what I'm going to do is go through the packet with you guys so you know what you have. The frame that we start with, everyone's got one of those, and you picked one out if you wanted one that was just one solid piece like this one, or wrapped one, because they were skinnier, so I was able to wrap some of them up. You have in one bag the middle part of it. And feel free to pull these out and look at it and arrange it while I'm talking. You have a piece of rabbit fur that I cut. This is the bottom part of the rabbit fur I just cut it and I'm using this bottom part. You guys, I think most of you have like a rectangular that goes all the way across. And I'll show you how to, how I cut these. I forgot to get the other piece of rabbit fur to show you. It's downstairs. And then you have some fringes that I made up for everyone. And these will be longer than what you need, so you'll be trimming those down. And then in the same bag, you will have 3 strips of leather that are the same size, and then you'll have one really long one. This long one will be for the hanger, and then these 3 will be for the braid that's going to go on the inside. Okay, so one baggie has this inside workings plus the hanger. Okay, and then your other bag is going to have all your feathers and your strings to hang your inside piece with. Right, so you're going to have 8 of the ties. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have all of your feathers. You have a little baggie of, I call these fluffs, because if you look at my sample, I used the fluffs along with some of the bigger feathers, like so. I put a bigger feather and then a fluff. Kind of makes it look really cool, doesn't it? Sometimes I just put the little fluffs by themselves on one of the strings too. So you're going to be creative in deciding what feather you want to put on with what fluff, or maybe just all feathers, or maybe just all fluffs. It's totally going to be up to you guys.
Can I ask what type of feathers did we receive here?
You have, I'm thinking it's mostly all turkey feathers. I did notice there were some pheasants. There was a couple I included. There were some ducks. These ones here are all ducks. Always, save your littler ones for the top. And so that's why I gave you the different sizes and the different types of feathers, so you can decide artistically how you want this laid out and what you want hanging where. So just to be advised, the smaller feathers keep to the top so you're not covering up and drowning your actual middle piece of your shield. I used shield and not mandala that time. And then you're gonna have all of these pony beads. There's going to be 2 beads per strip. You don't have to use 2 beads per strip, but they'll go on your ties, and I'll be showing you how to do that as well. Okay, so that's what's in that bag. All right, I'm going to stay organized by putting this feather bag back, because we're not going to get to that yet. If I don't stay organized, I will have everything all over the place. All right, so your middle piece has slots in each corner. And that's where your ties are going to be poked into. We don't want to do anything with that right now. What we want to do, the first thing we want to do is we want to lay our fringe in and glue that down. Now this is going to be too long. I measured it the same width as the circular part, but leather always stretches and when you cut it especially, so it's extra long. So what I would do is just measure it by laying it down next to, laying it down on one end and then loosely laying it down till you get to the other end, and then cut off what you don't need. I'm going to be cutting off 3 fringes. And if you cut off too much, you just pull it a little more and it fits. Instead of turning this over and putting the glue on your fringe and then trying to lay it down, you're probably going to make a big mess. Believe me, I've done that. So what you want to do is lay your straight line of glue across where you want your piece, and then gently put that on top. You want the glue and the fringe to be above this hole, because you need to put your tie through that hole. So your glue strip is going to come above that all the way across. Because if you do it below it, Let me just show you an example. If you glue it below that hole, next thing you gotta do is put on your rabbit fur. You're gonna end up gluing that hole shut. So we gotta try to avoid that. If you glue your strip of fringe over that, that still gives you access to that hole. All right, so you gently put in, you don't have to use too much glue, just gently kind of, if you have a hard time with straight lines, maybe scratch it across, don't worry about it. You don't need too much. The tacky glue holds leather down really, really well, really easily. I'm above that hole. I need access to that hole, so I'm not gonna cover it up. A little bit wider strip, and then gently lay it down. Oh, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna flip mine over. If you notice this other sample, the fringe is the same, the side of the fringe is the same as the side of the backing versus the back softer part. So I'm gonna flip my fringe over just to give that extra contrast, just because I want to see what it looks like. I think it's gonna look pretty. And then gently lay it in. Some people would maybe want to put a little wave in your fringe, meaning make it go up and down, up and down. That would be cool too.
So it doesn't matter which side we use as the facing, whether we use the soft leather or the shiny.
Hey, you can even use this side if you want. Mine is kind of cruddy on the back. Use this side and then the fringe opposite, or use this side and the fringe opposite. So I'm gonna try the fringe opposite. Like I said, this is a kit. It gives you all your basic pieces, but you can do with it what you want. This is your personal piece. You don't have to make it exactly the way I'm showing you. If you get some ideas, that'd be so cool. All right, so now the fur. If you notice, your rabbit fur always goes down in one direction. I made sure when I cut it, everyone has that nice natural hair that falls down from top to bottom. So you want to make sure that when you glue it on, it goes from top to bottom. So I'm going to put my glue just above my fringe piece. And I should lay this on the side all the time because it ends up taking forever to get to the bottom or to the tip. And like I said, you don't need much. Maybe I'm going to put a little bit on top of the fringe too. That might kind of help everything secure it down completely, right? And you can put it up a little higher, down a little higher, however you think is going to look the nicest. I want a little bit more of my fringe to show, so I'm going to put up a little bit more. All right, let that sit and dry, and then you're going to take your 3 short pieces of leather for your braid, and you're going to start braiding it. So you just kind of overlap it. If you want, if you have a piece of tape, you can use tape. I'm hoping everyone knows how to braid. But you just start, braiding it. Oops, I'm gonna go this way. I'm gonna tape it. There we go. And you can pull it tight when you tape it if you want, or you can keep it loose and have it flat. I'm going to keep mine loose and keep it flat. Some people want to pull it nice and tight, like when you braid hair, to make it more rounded. I want to keep mine nice and flat so the one side only shows. If you do pull it tight, it's going to end up being a really, really long braid. So just be prepared. You're probably going to have to cut a lot off when you get it glued down because there's going to be a lot hanging. But that might be cool to have that end hanging. Maybe you can add some more beads on the end and make a design out of it. Add to it. Starting to pop up and round out, so that's okay. I'm going to flatten it with my fingers. Okay, go like that. It kind of makes it nice and flat again. Okay. Bring this back in and kind of figure out where you want it before you lay it down. Ooh, that's going to be pretty. And it's going to keep coming apart, so you just got to keep trying to, you can take some glue right now and fasten it down with glue if you want. It will stick together once you get it all on. And if it's still too short, then you just pull it a little longer so you get the size you need. Leather is very forgiving and it's very fun to work with. You want to make sure my rabbit fur piece ends up doing a lot of weird things because I took the end of the rabbit fur and unfortunately it's wanting to go wild. The hair is really in all different directions for some reason. And then you just plaster it down and let that dry as well. You can trim off your edges, make it neater, or you can just leave them flapping around. I like the way it looks when it's just all flappy. I don't know, I just like that natural look. Some people like to have the neat edges and stuff. There you go, your middle is done. This is your long string for your hanger, right? So keep that aside. Keep it available because you will need that. All right, then you're going to take your hoop and you're going to add your ties, which is in your feather bag, right? So you get your ties out. And what I like to do is I like to apply one on top, one on bottom. And I don't like to pull too tight because then it's going to make your piece off-centered. You know, like if you pull up here, it's going to go, and then you're going to try to pull it down here. So loosely do it at first. Put it in the hole. I hope you can see. I keep feeling like I'm in the way. And then you're going to come up. I got this really neat little loop here. I'm going to use that loop. Okay, come up, even it out. And then tie it right where it lays. Don't try to pull it. Just tie it loosely once and twice, and then do that to the bottom. This keeps it even for you, and you're not pulling it in one direction or the other. All right, so here's the side that I put the glue above the hole. I still have access to that hole, so very important. Make sure you keep your access to that. So at this point, I am going to keep these very loose, like I said. Once I get them all tied on, I can go ahead and start tightening them, and because your middle leather piece is going to eventually get nice and taut and actually look like a shield. And you want that. You don't want it all saggy. And you'll know what I mean once you start tightening and adjusting your ties yourself. All right. I have some narrow feathers that I have from another wall hanging. And I'm kind of curious to find out how the narrow feathers are going to look. I kind of like that full look that the duck feathers give me on that sample that I was showing you guys. So you'd be surprised at how once you get the feathers on, the difference it makes. It's like, wow, it really gives it a different shape, and wow, it really fills it up nicely and adds that extra little beauty to it. And one of my other samples I did, I had porcupine quills on it. That was the one that you guys saw on the flyer. You can add what you want to that. I just glued those porcupine quills on just because I never did quilling before. But I would much rather have learned how to do a quilling technique and made it look really cool on here. One of these times I'll do that. Don't be afraid of not having your ties even. They don't have to be. The ties also add to the beauty of it when it's hanging too, because they kind of like have that little fringy look to them. All right, so I got all of them on. I'm going to quickly go around and readjust and retie. And you're gonna notice it's starting to pull. Look at that, cool. Oh, that's gonna be awesome. It's coming up off of the table. That's what you want. You want it to actually suspend itself like a leather shield. And notice how the edges are going almost right to the edge, right to the frame. That's okay. I think that's tight enough, actually. You could bounce a quarter off that. All right, so now you've got all of these nice little pony beads. Those will go on next. You might not use all of them, or you might, but I gave you enough for 2 for each tie. They go on loosely. Some of your ties might be a little skinny and your bead is going to possibly fall off. Now I'm going to show you what to do for that. Actually, I'll show you right now. What you can do, I wonder if that would help, no? What you can do is tie a knot underneath, and that prevents it from slipping. But you got to put it in a spot where you know it's not gonna, you're not gonna move it. Like I want my first feather to be way up here, so I'm gonna put it up here. I'm gonna tie a little knot and push it right up to the bottom of that bead. I'm not going to pull it really tight, because if I pull it really tight, my knot is going to be too tight and my bead's going to slide right over the knot, right? So what's the use of having a knot? So just do it loosely like that and it'll be fine. So then when you put in a small feather, I'm going to use this small feather. You're going to notice that the bead is really fat, really wide, and your feather just kind of slips and falls, slips and falls, slips and falls. This is where you can add some tacky glue. So you can put the tacky glue on your feather piece and quick stick it in and leave it dry. When it's dry, it's going to stick just fine. You can also take your feather and you can poke it right into the knot. Just find an open spot in the knot and push it through the knot and the bead. If you want to add a touch of glue inside of there for extra security, then do that. And that'll hold it just right, okay? And that's it. You just kind of go around, take all your feathers out, decide which ones you want where. It's like, oh, this smaller one belongs on top. I know, I think I tried to give everyone a blue one. Maybe the blue ones would look really neat hanging on top. This is too long. I don't want that big one in there. All right? So that part will probably take you the longest when you're going to try to decide what feathers you want where. I would suggest one big feather on each corner. So you have 8 big feathers total, right? And then you have a bunch of smaller feathers. Go ahead and fill up some of that with also the smaller feathers too. I'll show you my example of what I did on here. I have, I don't know, can you see that okay? That's not too fuzzy, is it? I have 2 beads. I have a fuzzy in the first bead. The second bead, I have my big feather and a fuzzy. In my other tie, I just have 1 feather and 1 fuzzy. with my 2 beads. So you don't have to fill up the beads. You know, it looks really nice having 2 feathers hanging. It doesn't have to be the exact same thing. Oops, look at that, came off because I didn't glue them. It doesn't have to be the exact same on both of them. Sometimes you might want to just have 1 feather hanging like that. You know, you got all this open spot on here too. You can add to that. There's conchos you can sew on. You can, you know, try your hand at something. It's a very personal piece. The kit I gave you and made up has the very basic pieces on it, and it's for you to add to it. You know, some people may even add little prayer ties on there. Sometimes you see people, you know, you'll see these hanging on the walls in the home, and you'll see maybe even a tobacco pouch hanging, or, you know, a shell or something. And they're always like adding to it or putting something on it or near it. They're just really beautiful pieces to have. They're very meaningful.